for the victory lap, though. Whoa, whoa. They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I should overcome. What for? Train in the trees, please pardon my sycamore. Touch burning sands, cross lands, and stormy shore seasons in the year, yeah. Ain't no channel for champions and chain no fear. Yup, the champ is here. Switch gears, we keeping haters in the rear. At the blood, sweat, and tears, and my goal so near. I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. And today, we break through. 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 I know it's lonely at the top, but that's not by speculation.
All right. There we go. Setting everything up. Welcome in, everybody, to the Jack Grammys pregame show. As always, I'm Danny Marang, co-host Brandon Sprague, joined by Light Years podcast co-host Sam Esfandiari. We're going to take a look at where the Blazers and Warriors sit in the Western Conference. Take a little bit of a preview of this game. We're obviously missing quite a few players on both sides, but we'll kind of address where each team sits. We'll kind of give everybody a second to pile in. That's how this always works. Thank you all for coming in. Thank you all for subscribing, following, liking, rating, reviewing the show. Appreciate you all so very much. It's the last pregame of the season for both the Trailblazers and the Warriors. Sam, Brandon, how you guys doing?
I'm good. Kind of excited. Ready for the NBA season to start.
So Brandon wasn't in here when you first came in the room, and you said that you were excited for preseason basketball, and that's basically sacrilege to Brandon. So, just in general, what are you actually excited about with preseason basketball? Because, like I said, Brandon hates it.
Okay, so it's got to go. It goes a couple ways. One, the Giants got eliminated, so baseball's done in the Bay Area as of last night. Two, the football team's season, whether it's the Niners or if you're still a Raiders fan around here, is vastly going downhill fast too.
Yeah.
So it's time. It's time for someone to come in and kind of breathe some light into the Bay Area sports scene. Also, just to tie into it, like the Warriors look the most fun they've looked in the last 2 years this preseason, particularly Jordan Poole. Don't know how real it is. Like, I think he's going to be good, but like probably not lead the NBA in scoring good.
How
either
much
way,
of
it's just exciting, right?
How much of that excitement do you think is going to carry over? Like, how much of this Warriors team, from what we've seen, obviously their first matchup against the Trailblazers, they had 69 nice 3-point attempts against the Blazers. It was obscene. They were coming frequent, often on the break, in transition, early offense, late offense. It was something to behold. Now, the Blazers have put in a new scheme, which I don't know if you call it a scheme yet. It's a little rough. How much of those 69 3-point attempts was Portland was just wildly lost on defense, and how much of that is the Warriors just going berserk?
So 69 is an outlier, but they've got up an average of 50 plus a game, even if you discount the 69 3-pointer game. They've been shooting the ball. I made this analogy on the Light Years podcast, which I host. They remind me of the Utah Jazz on offense, where it's like, it's kind of a hybrid of that ball movement that kind of made the Warriors famous 4 or 5 years ago, and kind of Daryl, like Morey ball, where it's just chuck it as much as possible. And that's kind of been a thing the Warriors have been trying to do since the end of last year, where it's modernize the ball movement offense that made them so famous. Because towards the end of the run with Kevin Durant, and really like the last year plus, when they're trying to figure out who they like on their roster, you could see that a lot of the stuff that used to work for them didn't really work for them anymore. Like, teams had seen them run the same sort of split action cuts and stuff like that for, I don't know, like 6-7 years. Right. So it's time to kind of up the ante a little bit there. And it really started at the end of last year. They ended 15-5, and over that final 20 games, they were second in the NBA in 3-point attempts And it does really feel like that is kind of an area of emphasis for them.
You know, Sam, I was really curious because they're undefeated so far in the preseason. Now, I don't take a lot away, but from the undefeated look of the Golden State Warriors, is it fair to categorize them as back? Would you put them in that title contention that they were at just a couple seasons ago?
I can't go there for two reasons.
Yeah.
One, I have no clue what Klay Thompson's going to look like when he returns. Like he'll be back, let's just say Christmas-ish. Which means he misses the first 30 games. Obviously, he's missed the last 2+ seasons. Like we can all be optimistic, but until we see it, we don't know what he is. And then secondarily, like there's still question marks inside with them. Like Draymond is still a phenomenal defender and one of the, he finished 3rd defensive player of the year last year, but Wiseman coming off of a meniscus and he had a rough rookie year anyway. Mm-hmm. Looney, he's solid for what he is. And then Bielitsa, another solid stretch option off the bench. But like, it's really, I feel like they're in a better position than they were last year, but it's still somewhat incomplete.
Were you surprised that they didn't move in the draft? Because they were like the hot team to say, hey, they're going to package these picks, they're going to move up. Were you surprised they did what they did?
Not really, because ownership,
I'm curious. I don't know the answer to this.
I mean, Joe Lacob's been on a media tour over the last 6 months, letting everyone know he's 100% pot into this, win now, develop now. We want to have our young guys while we still have like the core that made us famous. We can debate whether it's smart, but they seem pretty committed to that. And the other thing I know about the Warriors is they're not going to make a trade just for the sake of it. They're like one of those teams that has to feel like they're winning a trade. Yeah. And I just don't think anyone was like giving them anything amazing for the 7 and 14 pick. Yeah. So it was always going to be one of those things. We're going to draft them. We're going to develop them, make them look good. Maybe they'll pop like Jordan Poole is in preseason, and then we can see what we do.
So what I took out of that is you just called Bob Wires, Danny Ainge West.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, honestly, and just, I don't know if you guys know this, but Joe Lacob was a minority owner for the Celtics before he bought the Warriors. So he literally, his experience in NBA ownership was Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge is also who recommended Bob Myers to him to hire. So there is a little
there's a thread to pull on there.
Yeah, exactly. So
what have you, Sam, what have you made of all the noise? Like Dame and Draymond, they're really good friends. And I personally, I don't think that they're going to make a trade. Neil loves his guys too much. But what did you think of that noise when it was kind of out there? Like, hey, there could be a Draymond situation with a Ben Simmons trade of getting rid of Draymond down in the Bay and maybe coming up here to Portland.
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, Draymond's smart. He understands what type of team he needs to be on to really like take advantage of his skill set. And a team with 2 guards who can score and shoot the way that Dame and CJ can is a perfect fit, right? It's like same concept as Steph and Clay and that sort of thing. So I understand why Draymond does that. There's always been kind of the question mark of, will Draymond move on? Are they going to try to get younger there? Ben Simmons is obviously, he plays like Draymond. There's some obvious things there. So it never surprised me, but I just can't see it happening without either a complete internal like explosion to which like they have to trade him, which doesn't appear to be the case, or they want to, like you said, make a move for someone like Ben Simmons. And then it's like, well, there's only a few teams who really want Draymond, and Portland would be one of them. So
Sam, when you take a look at everything as it sits right now, obviously the big noise outside of Damian Lillard, whatever that situation was or has been going through the summer, is the coaching change in Portland. You guys obviously in the Bay had a coaching change where Steve Kerr comes in and things change, and Kerr is credited with so much. And I think that's the thing that everybody points to. It was just Steve Kerr. It's just Steve Kerr. It's just Steve Kerr, not the improved play of Steph Curry or Klay Thompson or Draymond Green being put in the lineup.
The fact that they were all in their early to mid 20s and on the
and everybody's
breaking out
at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and obviously the quote of the offseason in Portland was it wasn't a product of the roster. And that's what has been echoed over and over again. Chauncey Billups comes in, takes over the team. You've seen the Blazers at least once already in this preseason, albeit not fully healthy. How much impact do you think that Chauncey Billups can have? Can he take this roster and elevate them to a place that they haven't been before. Not necessarily in the results process, but competing at a level that they haven't competed at before.
It's hard to say because, I mean, where are you really looking for the improvement to come on the Blazers front?
Yeah.
Like, let me ask you that. Where are you expecting it to come from?
I mean, defensively is probably, would you say, Danny, the biggest one?
Yeah.
Everybody's pointing to that. They were damn near dead last, if not dead last. So I think everybody points to that and says, you get to top 15, you can maybe make a stride from where you were going into this year.
Yeah, and so maybe he does something with that. Like, I don't think they actually needed to change a lot on their offense. They've always been one of the better offenses in the NBA. I'm looking up now. They were second in offensive rating last year. It sounds about right.
But it's
like
too much ISO ball. Too much ISO ball, too much pick and roll.
Well, Sam, what's funny is he got really pissed at the defense, and it's basically what he cited as why he fired Terry. And then through the offseason, he came back, and when he talked to the media again, he kept bragging about keeping the roster together because the offense was so good. So that's kind of what we deal with here in Portland. Is that?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So I mean, there is a case to be made that if Chauncey can get them to defend as a unit and get them to, from, let's look it up right now, 29th.
Oh no, they were the second or third worst rating wise defensive team in NBA history. It was. It was. Yeah. I mean, think about a team that's throwing out Carmelo Anthony and Enes Kanter on the floor at the same time for 20 minutes a night.
Yeah, so I mean, doesn't the question come like what's going to happen with Nurkic and Covington and those guys? Because for me, when I watched Portland last year, both of them were wildly underwhelming. And
Covington and Nurkic, or Melo and Kanter.
Well,
because one of those for sure.
Melo and Kanter goes without saying on defense, but I would just say I've seen Robert Covington and Nurkic play better defense than they played last year.
Yeah,
so that's like an area that's like they don't even need to improve as players, like literally just get back to what you were doing before last year, type of thing.
Here's where I want to know from the outside looking in. When you look at those guys, you look at Nurk and you look at Covington, you look at Norm Powell, guys who I think you associate with, especially Covington, as being good defenders, good at what they do. Nurk as a rim protector, Covington as a help side defender, Powell is kind of a utility knife defender. When you look at Dame and CJ, who have struggled through most of their career, from the outside looking in, is there a level that you can get to where that within the scheme and whatever Chauncey puts in, being more aggressive to where the rate of return is actually there? From the outside looking in, do you believe that's a possibility?
I mean, yeah, they've done it in the past. Was it 3 years ago that they went to the Western Conference Finals, or was that 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That wasn't a juggernaut defense, but that was like, I don't think that's worse than, let's just say, the defense we've seen the Denver Nuggets play the last couple of years, which is like coherent team defense, but nothing special. I think they're capable. Like, Larry Nance is a good pickup. Covington has been a really good help side defender for most of his career. Nurkic kind of fluctuated up and down, but like, he is a good interior defender when he's healthy, right? Am I wrong there?
No, that's the thing is, I think individually when you look at these guys over the years, they've had guys that have made sense. Even the Harkless Amino years, they had guys that made sense. It's just been at the point of attack has just been basically. I think the simple way to put this is, point of attack wise, is there enough between everybody else? When you look at this roster, can they do enough at that spot to really make it make sense?
I mean, probably not. But if you want to look at other, like, I mean. Well, okay, it's a little more complicated than that, because like, what does Utah have? Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell are both tiny. I wouldn't consider Donovan Mitchell a particularly amazing defender or better defender than like CJ McCollum at this stage, but they have Rudy Gobert behind them, right? That helps. That erases a lot of things. So the more I think about it, the more this actually really comes back to kind of the center position with Portland, right? Yeah. Because if you're going to play a smaller backcourt, you got to have some sort of rim protection behind them. And that's just kind of waxed and waned over the years. Like, Covington's going to help you out in the ways he does, but he's not the interior rim protector, right?
Well, and when Nurk got traded here that season for the remainder of the season with Portland, he elevated him. I think they got to a top 10 group once he got here. It was basically the same team minus Plumlee, and you added Nurkic. So there's no doubt what you're saying is true. How do you begin to even stack up what the Western Conference is, and how you kind of view both of these teams going into it?
I was just talking about that with someone as I was kind of like trying to put together my season preview pod. And it's like, I think there's a lot of good teams in the West. I'm not sure there's a single great team. Like, I feel like the East, it's Milwaukee and Brooklyn,
Top
and
heavy,
then
yeah.
everyone else, it feels like, are a tier below them, assuming health, of course.
Yeah.
In the West, I mean, I don't know what the Lakers are doing. Like,
I was just
obviously,
saying, you guys have played them and seen that roster up close. Hasn't looked all that. Honestly, I think Portland and LA have been the two most unimpressive teams in the preseason.
Yeah, and it's like on the LA front, it's like, who's the player who makes the least possible sense around LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, right? Like, so it's like, I don't know what they're going to do there. I mean, on the one hand, all it takes is a couple tweaks and LeBron playing, up to his ceiling, and they're as dangerous as anyone, right? But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know, man, half the rotation is older than me, and I'm not young. So it's like, that's just not a good look.
This is not a young podcast, okay? I'll just say that.
And then, like, I mean, going down the list, like Phoenix, good, but do they seem unbeatable to? Like, they might be my favorite team in the West right now. And I feel like they wouldn't have even got through the West if it wasn't for the Clippers injuries last year. The Clippers,
would they even beat the Lakers if there were no injuries? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either, honestly. Yeah. And, the Clippers, I don't think Kawhi's coming back at all this year, so I'm taking them off the table.
It's gone from he's not going to play at all to he'll be back in January to he's not going to play at all. And it's one of those things where you're like, I'm not going to count it. Until he's back.
It's not like he has a dicey injury history.
No, there's nothing to pull back on there. So
yeah. And then you go down the list, like Utah. I mean, I feel like we've seen it in the playoffs every year. They're really good. They can't guard the perimeter. And, and inevitably teams will pick on that at some point in the playoffs. Denver, I really like them. They're good. More question marks there. And, like, who knows when
if they
Jamal
get
Murray
Murray
will be
back, do you think they're a favorite?
They'd be up there, but I don't even know how good he'll be when he comes back. Like, his return date is like beginning of playoffs. That's a lot to put on a guy. Like, I like them more once he gets 6 months off of that going into next year for sure. But, like, asking him to be Jamal Murray with like
you want him to be Adrian Peterson off the 5-month ACL repair, for the Vikings kind of deal.
League MVP.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that's I think where people are going a little bit sideways.
I think Denver's a sneaky pick because, well, one, you got the MVP. I think they're just relying on Porter Jr. to take that step. And even if Murray comes back slowly, you got Porter Jr. taking that step. I think a third piece of being Jamal Murray off an ace, I think that could work really well for them.
It definitely. And I think, Porter Jr.'s my pick for most improved player, whatever the award is there. Like, I just think he's going to average 25.
I would say he hits that 25-point plateau and it's over. As far as
he can really score the ball. I'm not worried about that. Now he doesn't have Jamal Murray to share shots with. I'm sure he's thrilled about the year he's about to have. But yeah, no, I like Denver. That's a good call. They might end up being the best team in the West, but the way I look at it, like, all these teams they feel one player away from being an actual finals team. Like, in the Lakers case, it's like, remove Russell Westbrook and I'm at in Denver's case, we're talking about injuries. In Utah's case, it's like, man, if they could just get one wing defender. Portland, get someone else inside who can kind of help Nurkic in some capacity there. Warriors, it could be Clay or it could be something else. I can keep going down the line. So it feels like a conference that's going to have 8 to 10 teams who win between 45 and 55 games to me.
Can I ask
they're all
you,
like bundled?
Yeah. So I'm curious about the Warriors in this regard, like how you view the future of them, because it feels just yesterday they were winning championships, getting to the finals. They were the best thing of basketball. And now I'm curious if you still think they're light years ahead of the rest of the league.
Nice plug.
And then also I'm kind of curious. It might be misguided idiot from Portland, Oregon, reading tea leaves incorrectly. But, like, what is the longevity of Draymond, Clay, Steph in the Bay as they're also trying to, like, develop and bring up these young guys?
If you listen to Steve Kerr's quotes, it always feels like he talks about how, like, Steph and Clay are one franchise guys. And he'll say it, and then, like, he'll try to correct himself and throw Draymond into it. But it's like, you always get the impression that as a team, they want to keep those two guys. But Draymond's probably going to be the guy who has a second chapter with another team at some point. Yeah. Now, it's a little dicey because he's he plays so well with Steph, and Steph loves him, and there's just such a synergy there. So it's like they can't just dump him without like outright replacing him with something like that. But that's always been something that has been a question. Like if I had to bet on it, I think Steph will retire a Warrior. Clay, a better than 50% chance he does. He means he is valued internally, like for reasons beyond basketball, at a very high level. And Draymond will probably end up playing somewhere else, for whether it's like the Paul Pierce, like, you know, retirement tour, or it's like,
is he going to get more love than Paul Pierce?
or like I could also see him going somewhere like Portland or another team and having like a 2 to 3 years, you know, run where he's still a very important contributor for a team. Like, I don't know, something like that. But to your first question about the direction of the Warriors, I feel like they're in a big holding pattern. That's the best way I can put it.
Mm-hmm.
Wiseman was a number 2 pick. Kuminga is 18 or 19, number 7 pick. They have these like delusions of doing the Spurs thing where like those guys age and these guys pop the way Kawhi did.
Right. And
they have no down years, so to say. Like last year is as bad as it gets, where you're a lower tier playoff team who gets eliminated in the play-in and everything goes that way. I just don't know how feasible that is, because that's like, I don't think there's a franchise in the NBA who wouldn't like that. Like, yes, I would like to be good every year for the next 15 years with like this long-term sustainable plan. So my whole thought on it is it's kind of like they're in a holding pattern. They did a poor job with development last year. They changed their whole development staff, and we'll see. Maybe Wiseman pops this year, or maybe he just looks good enough that he opens up a trade you want.
When you look at this team, and I know I think we're all kind of in the same boat as far as the Western Conference is concerned.
Sure.
But when you look at where the Blazers stack up and where the Warriors stack up, which team do you see kind of being on that higher level right now?
I mean, well, you're just asking me to be a homer now.
No, I mean, I'm
it
realistically.
has to be Golden State,
listen, I'm the Blazers guy, and I'm putting the Warriors up ahead. I don't believe in this team in the sense of it's got a real chance. I think if the Warriors get Clay back at 75% of Clay, you throw them in the mix of making a Suns-like run. That's how I see it.
I think if they stay healthy, they're a fairly reasonable bet to exceed their Vegas over-under, which is currently 49 games. I think it is a 50-win roster if they stay healthy. They wanted a 60-win pace at the end of last year. Can't really read too much into that because it was only a third of the season. Yeah. But it did it's when they made kind of a stylistic change to when they wanted to play, and they're carrying it into this preseason now. Like, they are going to be one of the 2 or 3 best 3-point shooting teams in the league. And you have the best 3-point shooter in the league on that team. They're going to space you out, and if nothing else, just put a lot of pressure on you that way. I have question marks on if they have anyone who can put pressure on the rim. Like, it's probably not going to be Andrew Wiggins. And Wiseman makes sense in the, like, you know, Gobert, Ayton kind of pick and roll rim runner way, but like, he's a lot rawer than those guys were, and he's in year 2. Like, Ayton didn't really even pop till year 3, just for reference. So like, I don't know that that's happening now. So I think I would put them above Portland, but I mean, we'll see what happens.
It felt like when Wiseman started his rookie year, he had a couple games and Warrior fans were like, oh, here we go. And then, man, it hit the side of a mountain fast and he wasn't even playing. How do Warrior fans view James Wiseman right now? And then, like, just kind of how optimistic or pessimistic are they on what he will become?
It depends who you talk to, but my general sense is they're very high on him. You got to understand, this franchise, this fan base has like an obsession with the big man. Like, it goes back to like my childhood. Like, they've constantly been in search for like the center of the future, and they've drafted no less than like a dozen busts in my lifetime.
O'Donnell Foyle didn't make that cut.
I mean, O'Donnell over T-Mac, Todd Fuller instead of Kobe Bryant or Steve Nash. Ike Diagu instead of literally anyone. I mean, I can keep
Arizona
going.
State legend.
Yeah, shout out Ike Diagu, Pac-12 Player of the Year.
I was briefly on the Ike Diagu train.
Yeah.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. I was convinced he was going to be like their version of Karl Malone. And
To demonstrate this, we got somebody here on Twitch, Quinn Better. God, I hope they trade Big Jim. So I'm assuming it's one of your light years guys right there. There's your split fan base as far as
definitely. But the internet's an interesting place. There's probably more.
Well said.
There's more extreme opinions on Wiseman there. When I talk to general Warrior fans, they're just enamored with the highlight plays, and
which he does make.
Yeah, I mean, you see a 7-1 guy who moves like that, like it's very intriguing. It is. So I think in general there's optimism about him, but you got to remember, since Laker bought this team, they've kind of spoken everything into existence. So for a certain segment of the fan base, it's like until they see him bust, they won't believe that it's a possibility. It's like they have that like exceptions. It's like, well, of course he's going to be an all-star. We're the Warriors now, right? You know, that type of thing.
When you're going into a preseason or a final preseason game, something that Brandon and I have talked a lot about, and whether or not it matters, the Blazers through 3 games have not looked – well, they've looked like crap. And I'll just flat out. They have not had a 4-minute period where they played basketball where you're like, oh, okay, I get it. The closest thing that we have come to is Anfernee Simons on opening night looking like, hey, he can play some backup point guard, and Damian Lillard having about a 20-second stretch and scoring 12 points and going, oh, right, he can still do that. Yeah. Other than that, you have not – CJ has been awful. He hasn't hit anything. Norm has kind of been a little here or there. Nurk has had he complained and wanted a larger role, and he's fumbled the ball, more than anybody at this point. He's averaging almost 5 turnovers a game. He's not finishing shots around the rim. Larry Nance Jr. is still trying to get acclimated. He's had a few flashes here or there, but again, you haven't had like anything that you can go, yeah, I can dial up on this. Watching that Warriors team in this first matchup, you watch Jordan Poole absolutely cook, and you're going, that's a whole damn game's worth of, hey, that looked pretty good. Then he did it again and again, and you're going, oh, okay, there's something you can pull from there. When you're looking at this Warriors team and even this game tonight, what are you looking to pull from besides, hey, Jordan Poole looks like he could be a candidate for most improved?
In general, the Jordan Poole experience has just been a euphoric ride. So like, it's just fun to watch him and Steph cook, like in general. But beyond that, let's see what else was it. So Kuminga's not playing tonight. That would have been a big one just to see where he's at. It doesn't seem like his knee injury is serious, but like, who's rushing someone with a strained knee in preseason, right?
Yeah.
Wiseman, he's still a month away from playing, so he's not playing. Moses Moody and Gary Payton II.
Yeah, baby.
And Oregon State legend.
Oh, Beavs.
And I was going to say, and Avery Bradley, they're kind of fighting for the last guard rotation spot. Moses Moody's going to be on the roster no matter what, but GP2 and Avery Bradley are fighting for that 15th spot. The only reason I throw Moody into it is if he plays so well in this last preseason game, I could see the Warriors just not carrying a 15th man just to keep the roster flexibility going forward.
Hey, there it is. Roster flexibility.
Neil O'Shea-isms.
You got to love because the Blazers haven't carried a 15th player in, I don't know, a decade.
10 years.
It's been a while. It's always the whole idea.
Just saving that spot for when KD becomes available in the trade.
Yeah. No, because all of that cap space the Blazers have had for forever. They've done absolutely everything with, right?
I think that's really the only thing from a Warrior perspective that is like a battle going on. Other than that, it's like, I've seen everything I need to see from this team in the preseason. Like it's clear what their identity is going to be. And it's clear they're playing with like a level of focus that other teams aren't playing in the preseason. So I'm assuming Portland's going to play harder because this is the quote unquote dress rehearsal game before the season starts. So like, let's just see how the Warrior players look.
They kind of did that last game, and then they got absolutely hammered.
They lost by
they ran the starting lineup out against Phoenix, and they scored 11 points in the quarter.
Nice.
They got absolutely decimated. It was
so it's
not
it's a
great,
bunch
Bob.
it's a bunch of positivity.
Oh yeah. No, that's it. It's so like grand scheme. Again, Brandon hates preseason and thinks it's mostly pointless, and you can't really take a ton from it. I love speaking for him here.
It's not mostly pointless. It is pointless.
See, there we go. But when I'm of the mind of, hey, let's find something. Let's see, even if it's not great, even if it's not fully functioning and working, you can pull something and go, okay, I see what they're doing there. Especially when you've got a new coach, you're trying to integrate some new things. You want to see something, right? At least a little bit of an indicator, or do you just kind of go, it's just preseason?
I think you want to see a little bit of something. So it's like, for me, first off, preseason is largely not important.
Yes.
But when teams are in one extreme or the other, it's a little bit of a tell. I'll put it this way. Steve Kerr's first year, when he took over, they were beating the hell out of everyone in preseason. And they looked like a completely different team. And I didn't really know what to make of it other than they looked really good. And I thought they were going to start hot. And then the first year post KD, the one where Steph inevitably broke his hand in the fourth or fifth game of the season, but they had D'Angelo Russell, former Warriors legend, and like
I always blank that year out.
Yeah, I remember watching them in preseason and being like, this is bad. They were non-competitive in like 4 out of 6 games, and it looked like JV versus varsity in those type of games where it's like,
damn,
they can't get shots off, and it's like the other team literally stops trying, and that's when they make the score look like a competent normal score. And how did their season go? Exactly like that. So I feel like if you're in one of the two extremes, it's either a positive sign or a red flag. But like 27 of the teams in the league are generally floating somewhere in the middle there, where it's like, I don't really know what I can take from this. They look good 2 games. They look bad 2 games. They look mediocre another game.
So, Sam, your answer could be drastically different than the fans, but I'm still curious. Let's assume the over-under is telling me they're not in the play-in situation again. So let's assume they get close, if not hit over that number. What is categorized as a good year for Golden State this year for you?
For me, it is 50 plus wins and at least one round of the playoffs. I want them to be so good that they put pressure on ownership to go all in is what I want. Ownership at this point is, like I said, they're being overprotective of their assets. It's a little Boston Celtics-y. I also get it. Like they don't know what Klay Thompson's going to look like. And if Klay comes back and it's bad, then they just threw away a bunch of stuff to do.
And they got to reset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I want to see them come out so hot that like we start hearing noise that like they need to make a trade. They need to do something. They go all in. The West they're the 2 or 3 seed in the West, and Klay isn't even all the way integrated. They should be looking to move some of these young players for someone who can help them right now. But yeah, to bring it back, definitely over 50 wins and at least win one round of the playoffs. That would be considered a success.
Do you think Cat is a possibility in Minnesota if they get to that point where they need to go all in? Because I was trying to think of trades as you were talking, and I couldn't think of
that's
the
thing. I can't think of anyone other than Ben Simmons and Pascal Siakam who are available. Ben Simmons, I don't know, man. I like it. I like the way he fits with the Warriors, but I just, knowing the way that their management operates, I can't imagine them going all in on a guy who's, let's just say, hasn't shown like the most mental toughness.
He's a different duck, dude. He's a different duck.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Would you say that the biggest risk that the Warriors have taken in the last 10 years is obviously Monta, but since then, have they taken a risk close to making that decision? Or is that the last time they took a real risk?
The biggest risk they took was the sign and trade for D'Angelo Russell. KD's leaving and they're desperate to get something in return. And they get D'Lo for the max deal, which they obviously then flipped for Wiggins and the pick, which became Kuminga. But if you wanted to go back in time, they could have created cap space instead of perennially operating in this scenario where they're over the luxury tax. If Kevin Durant leaves, they haven't signed Draymond to an extension yet. And Iguodala's on his last year expiring. They can easily get under the cap and reset if they wanted to. They could look at different options. They made the determination, we want another max player in here, max, whatever you want to say, but like
a max salary slot. Yeah,
exactly. We want another player in here. We're going to operate over the cap. We're going to deal with the luxury tax and do things that way. And it's just questionable if that was the best way to go about it. It may work out for them. In fact, it's probably working out for them in some capacity now, because like they had the injury, they had the gap year, which got them Wiseman. And then that Wolves pick, I mean, number 7, it's hard to do better than that, right? Like in a trade scenario. I mean, they could always got lucky, but like you gotta be pretty happy with that return.
Yeah.
And Wiggins, for all his Wigginsness, has been somewhat useful for them. I mean, he fits a need.
Yeah.
He's like a, $15 million wing defender who's getting paid $30 million, but that's not my money.
It's not exactly, and I think that's still, to me, outside of playmaking, shot creation, the rarest commodity in the league is the 6'7", 6'8", big-bodied wing who you can put on somebody and you're not going, crap, because right now that option for Portland is 6'3" Norman Powell. And that's a stark difference in how they can,
Or Larry Nance Jr., but he's really more of a 4.
He's a 4-5. That's what I mean. They don't have Nassir Little is the only guy they have.
And he can't stay healthy.
And he just keeps picking up knock after knock after knock. Similar to what Brandon asked you, and we'll get you kind of out of here on this. What's a successful year for the Portland Trailblazers look like to you from the outside? Obviously, with all of the noise, Terry Stotts out, Chauncey Billups in, the Damian Lillard saga.
Yeah.
What does a successful season look like if you're sitting there going, You've got them below the Warriors, which I think we all do. I think Portland is right on that cusp of anywhere between 5 and 9. And I think that's kind of how the West is going to be. But when you're looking at it, what does a successful season look like?
So I should have thrown this one in for the Warriors, but I'll say it for Portland. So the first thing for me for Portland is one of their young players pops in like a sustainable way. Not like I like Anfernee Simons. He's very intriguing, but he hasn't put together a full season in that capacity. So whether it's him, whether it's Nassir Little, who sounds like would be your preferred one because he has the physical profile of a player you guys desperately want and need. One of their young players pops. The product of that makes the Blazers better than a play-in team. So they're back in that like 4 to 6 range instead of falling to 7 or 8 or something like that. And they get out of the first round, they make a little noise. They build some momentum because they've found something internally which matters, and that might change the trajectory. Because when I look at Portland, the biggest thing I wonder is like, how many years in a row are we going to do the Dame and CJ thing? And not a lot else around it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like just one other player popping. And I pulled out 2 names. One would just change the total trajectory.
Well, that's the only young guys Portland has.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, there's
everybody else, like Greg Brown's a 2-way guy.
Yeah, Trendon Watford and Greg Brown were both.
And he's
drafted.
a long-term project.
Yeah,
Anyway.
both those guys they just took flyers on. Keldon Blevins is Damian Lillard's cousin.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Like it's Anfernee Simons.
Hey, we got Steph's brother-in-law on the team. Nothing wrong with that.
It's all in the family, baby. We love nepotism in the NBA.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's actually probably part of the reason we're so excited for the Warriors season right now, because Jordan Poole looks really exciting. He looks like he's going to be a player for them in some capacity. And that really takes the pressure off of like Wiseman and Kuminga and any of those guys. Cause like last year, it just felt like there was so much on Kuminga. It's like, all right, number 2 pick, do something,
Yeah.
And, leave out the part that he's 19 and, 19-year-olds tend to be really
and played 2 games in college.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I mean, that's, as we've seen, unless your name is, Zion, there's gonna be a curve. And especially when you're talking about bigs in the NBA, everybody talks about how hard it is to play the guard position. I think we've kind of forgotten that the players that take the longest to develop and historically have always are bigs. And I think that's kind of the situation they're going to find themselves in. Like I said, we kept you a little bit longer than we wanted to. We're just hitting 40 minutes now, so we'll get you out of here and get ready to watch the game. Sam, go ahead and plug everything you got. Light Years, a fellow Blue Wire Podcast Network member. What do you guys got coming up?
Yeah, we got our season preview podcast coming out on Monday, but in general during the season, just check Light Years podcast on all pod players, Apple, Spotify, whatever. We'll have episodes up on the regular. We're also doing watch parties for our subscription-based Light Years premium members. So if that interests you, if you're a diehard Warriors fan, we have a bunch of watch parties coming up on this new platform we're working with called Playback. But yeah. Otherwise, you can just check out my social feeds. I plug everything there. You can find any link you need that way.
All right, Sam, thanks for joining us, man. I really appreciate you. And hopefully we'll get you back during the season and we can talk about some actual basketball. So Sprague,
Thanks a ton, Sam.
Talk about preseason basketball.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.
All right. Thank you all for watching. Remember, like, rate, review, subscribe.